It's another Friday. Good evening and welcome to Facts of the Week here on Ghana's #1 CTV, the only authoritative show that separates the facts from fiction, lies and propaganda. My name is Valentina Ofori Afriyie. I'm pleased to be your host for tonight. Facts of the Week is supported by Fairnut. Wood is for life. Great furniture is made by Fairnut, and also supported by the best natural mineral water. That's Akwaba natural mineral water, quenching thirst and nourishing the nation with pure, clean, refreshing Akwaba natural mineral water. Tonight, we have things to tell you. I'm sure this week you've heard a lot of things. There was the National Economic Dialogue, where the Finance Minister made some revelations. SOEs are in red. Are they in red? Are all of them in red? Is it a fact? Is it a propaganda? Is it a lie? We've had some responses from other people. And also the whole hullabaloo about free SHS. How many people really enrolled in the free SHS? 1.7, 1.5? Is it less than the number? Tonight, we'll tell you what the real figures are. And then also, we'll talk about privatization of ECG. Are we selling it out? What are the real details? Stay with us tonight on Facts of the Week. This is CTV, Ghana's #1, and you're welcome to Facts of the Week. Tonight, I have two gentlemen with me here to do the discussion. Mr. Benjamin Insia is an energy analyst. He's to my right, and to my left, Dr. Desmond Kofi Annan is a broadcast journalist. Good evening, gentlemen. You're welcome to Facts of the Week.
Good evening.
Good evening.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Finally.
We've met.
Okay, yes, and it's great to be here. I'm sure this week you follow the economic dialogue.
I did.
You listened to the Finance Minister, where he was very emphatic. Almost all SOEs are in red. Let's listen to the Finance Minister, and then I'll pick your thoughts as to whether or not all SOEs are in red.
Your Excellency, the cocoa sector also poses a significant fiscal risk. Declining cocoa production with record high prices. Cocoa production has dropped nearly 50% over the past 3 years. The 2023-2024 crop season, Cocoa Board was not able to supply 330,000 tons of cocoa contracts. Existing forward sales contracts locked in lower prices than current market rates. Revenue losses of $840 million for both Cocoa Board and the Ghanaian farmer as a result of what is happening at Ghana Cocoa Board. Additionally, about $500 million losses for rollover contract was achieved in the last year. The market prices and differentials is what aids smuggling. Large gap between market price and farmers' payment encourage smuggling and threatened long-term sustainability. This implies that for every ton of cocoa delivered this year, in fulfillment of the rollover contract, Ghana Cocoa Board and the Ghanaian farmer would lose $4,000 per ton in revenue. No wonder we are unable to offer the cocoa farmer the right price, because every ton delivered because of the rollover contract, $4,000 has been lost. And so the government is unable to offer enough for the cocoa farmer. And this is what is actually leading to the smuggling of cocoa beans to our neighboring countries, Togo and Ivory Coast.
So that's the Finance Minister, Dr. Kesala Toforson, talking about Cocoa Board's indebtedness. He also talked about VRE. He talked about ECG at that place. Mr. Nsia, let me start with you. Are all SOEs in red?
I think most of them not even think, factually most of them are in red, but not all.
Okay.
If you look at the state ownership report for 2023, there are 3 categories when it comes to state-owned entities.
Okay.
We have the so-called state-owned entities, we have joint ventures or JVCs, and also other state owned entities or OCs.
Okay.
Now, when most of the OCs are performing well because they are not owned by state, but rather private individuals where government has some equity or shares in these entities. So for them, they are doing well. Some of the JVCs are also doing well. But when it comes to the SOEs, basically the state-owned entities, I think that most of them are in red. And if you look at the debt liabilities of that part of the entities that the state has some equity or some interest in, I think that we'll just conclude that they are in red, but not all of them, but most of them are in red. And the liabilities are hovering around 200 billion Ghana cedi as at 2023, and it keeps compounding. And this is an area where we have an asset base of about 800 billion Ghana cedi. So the position has been that if we have state-owned entities with an asset of about 800 billion Ghana cedis, even as a state, we're able to manage them efficiently to realize about 10% of these assets as retained earnings. That means that we are mobilizing almost 80 billion Ghana cedis annually from these assets, but they are not doing well. So not all, but majority are in red. That as a country we need to reset and then have certain new ways of or innovative ways of financing them, and also making sure that they become very profitable, especially with respect to efficiency and also effectiveness.
So what will you say to people who say that the finance minister lied by saying that almost all SOEs are in red?
He didn't, and those who said so might have not had the privilege of reading the state-owned, we call them the state ownership reports, and they are published annually by SIGA, also by the Minister of Finance. If you go and then take all these in terms of the assets increment year on year, I think for the past 6 or 7 years, we've published these reports, right? And they are online. If you take a critical look at them, you realize that yes, he didn't lie. Most of them are in red. And I think that if the finance minister mentioned it, I might be having this position that he wants to take that part of our government doing business very seriously, because I believe that if state-owned entities are managed well, some of these taxes that we have on various maybe various consumables and other things will not be imposed, because that area alone can mobilize 80 billion Ghana cedis to support the budget of this particular republic.
For those who are saying that the minister lied, let's say we have 53 SOEs and 39 reported profits in 2023 per their audited accounts. 5 improved in performance in 2022 to 2023. So majority of them made profit. So you can't say that almost all of them are in red.
I think, I don't know where they got the data from with respect to 53, but what I know is that the state-owned entities are more than 175 per the 2023 report. And this is a figure that has increased from the 2022. So 53 SOEs, I don't think that is right. We need to critically look at the data and then investigate it well. There are more than 53. So maybe the fellow might be misleading the public, because the fellow is not privy to the state ownership report, which normally presents a report on entities that the state has interest in them.
Okay, so let me read that report by Joseph Kujo, okay? And Joseph Kujo, we all know him as a former appointee or former Minister of State Enterprises. Now, that's what he wrote. He says, the finance minister lied that most SOEs are in red. There are 53 SOEs, 39 reported profits in 2023 per their audited accounts. 5 improved in performance from 2022 to 2023 by reducing losses. Why would the finance minister have the guts to say most of the SOEs were in red? Meanwhile, during their time, most of these SOEs were not even preparing accounts at all. It's worth noting that Ghana has 175 public enterprises on its assets register. Now, out of that 175, 53 are state-owned enterprises, SOEs, which are commercial per their mandates. 75 other state entities. These are regulators like the Food and Drugs Authority, Petroleum Commission, National Petroleum Authority, GPHA, DVLA, GRA, etc. These 75 SOEs are distinct from the 53 SOEs, which are expected to make profit. Finally, there are 47 joint venture companies, JVCs, which are co-shared commercial investments by government with private investors. Examples include Gold, GCB Bank, SIC Insurance, Newmont, Goldfield, etc., etc.
Yes, so as I indicated earlier, there are 175, and I think he confirms that those are the numbers of the state-owned enterprise. And normally, if you look at the state ownership report, even though there are these three classifications, we categorize all as state-owned enterprises. That's how we call them. So if you single out the part that fully is owned by government, to say 39 out of 53 fully owned by government made some profit, and the others did not make, 5 did not make. The argument may be bad, because that's how we classify all of them. And that's why I put it earlier that if you look at the assets base of this whole 175, we're talking in excess of 800 billion Ghana cedis. So if 800 billion Ghana cedis and the liabilities in that sector are more than 400 billion, because if you take only the SOEs, as he mentioned, the liabilities are in excess of 200 billion. If you take the joint ventures, liabilities are in excess of 175 billion. If you take the other companies, they do not have much liabilities, but it's also hovering around 100 billion. So if you take these three classifications with higher liabilities, and you are not able to make a lot of, I think the dividend for 2023 was not even up to $1 billion. The dividend in 2023 was not up to $1 billion. So if you have 800 billion assets, and you were able to make less than $1 billion, then it means you are in red. You are not performing, right? We should not be arguing. And some of them, their liabilities are, some of them, the losses of some of them are even higher than the dividend realized, right? So
like
we should,
ECG.
Not only ECG, TOR has been consistently in the last 5 years has been making losses, right? Apart from TOR, ECG is making losses, VRA is making losses. Maybe in the past, Cocoa Board is making huge losses. So if you put these losses together, made by these entities, it outruns the dividends made by the other sectors. And the reason why we even realized dividend in 2023 is because of the other state-owned entities. They are not commercial in nature, but because they mobilize a lot of revenue. For example, MPA made almost 79 million Ghana cedis for 2023.
Yeah.
So if they're able to mobilize a lot of revenue, then it means that they go to cushion the liabilities of the other state-owned entities. So if he says it's in red, it's in red. We must critically relook at them, develop certain models that make them very efficient and effective. And if we are able to develop models that make them very financially viable to retain some earnings, we will not be thinking of imposing a lot of taxes on Ghanaians to burden them.
Doc?
Yeah. Val, it's quite interesting. For me, the response is even needless. And Mr. Nsia has just said it right. He couldn't have said it any more better than what he said. See, if you have an entity where you could, or a group of entities, state-owned entities, where if you do your things right, you are supposed to get dividends over 800 million or whatever figures that it is, and you are making just $1 million, and you think that it is enough to beat your chest about and say you've made profit, and so you don't understand why somebody is calling it as being a red kind of business or in danger kind of business, and so you don't understand. We have to rebut the issues this way. I mean, for me, it's a non-starter. See, when the minister was giving the speech, the opening speech at the event, he did mention that Ghana Grid Company is in red, Water River Authority is in red, PSC Tema Shipyard, a subsidiary of GPHA, is in red, Ghana Railway Company Limited is in red, Ghana Cylinder Manufacturing Company is in red, Gihog Distilleries is in red.
Gihog is the one that benefited from one district, one factory.
Exactly, and it's in red, so you can just imagine.
Yeah.
Precious Minerals Marketing Company is in red. Accra Digital Center, red. Airtel Tigo Ghana, red.
The one the government bought for
Ghana Post Company, red. Graphic Corporation. See, Ghana Cocoa Board, Consolidated Bank, the so-called what do you call it? Bank, amalgamated bank or whatever they call it.
For the banking sector reform, if you're looking at what the Consolidated Bank Ghana is,
exactly,
that's the bank that government collapsed a lot of banks to make them together so that they can work.
Exactly.
They are in red, actually.
Ghana Commodity Exchange.
And the figure is actually staggering because if you look at the data that they've given, in 2022, it was over 1,505.46. And then 2023, you have 543.96.
Exactly. So if these figures, and he makes the case strongly that Cocoa Board, the one that everybody is even talking about that it is not true, challenging his figures and all that, it was because Cocoa Board refused to pay its own debts. That is why the figures were looking the way it was looking for them to even be saying some of the things. And so please, this is a non-starter. We all know. We don't need anybody to tell us that some of these companies and more did not perform, were in red, and the figures speak for itself. And so some of these things that some of these our leaders would do to us, I mean, at this point in time, we cannot entertain this because the figures and the facts speak for itself as we've put it out to our viewers. Val, for me, it is a non-starter. I repeat that it's a non-starter. The minister or the former minister, I think he was in charge of sector reforms.
Private sector, yes,
private sector reforms also. And so he thinks that
enterprises.
It is he should come again and admit to the fact that these are the actual figures, because the man gave us the actuals from 2021 to 2023. The figures are here, and so I'm surprised he's not even challenging the figures, but he's interested in going around and beat around the bush to come and say that. He didn't even
provide any figure to back his point.
You know, so I mean, Mr. Nsia has given us the details, and I just sought to add these ones to it so that our viewers would appreciate some of the things that we are talking about and not just concocting and just saying things.
So if you take the report, for example, 2023, profit after tax, state-owned entities made a loss of 2 billion Ghana cedis. Right?
That is more than what you are at the IMF for.
Yeah, more than 2 billion Ghana cedis, right? Yeah. That's how much loss you made. So if he said you were in red, you were in red. So because if you do a cumulative or a weighted average of the various profitability of the 53 or 39 companies he mentioned against the others that did not make profit, if you put everything together, you are in red because you made a loss of 2 billion Ghana cedis. So there was a loss there.
I was surprised not to see Bank of Ghana there, because Bank of Ghana also made losses.
Yes, I think it's also part of the other state-owned entities. And yes, they made losses, and the losses were recognized and reported in the state-owned enterprise. So the losses were made. I think the profitability is not even up to 400 million Ghana cedis. So if you have 800 billion worth assets and your profitability is just 400 million, right, maybe 0.0001, then you are not being efficient. And that is a discussion we must have as a country, that why do we have these assets, but these assets are not doing business? And surprisingly, these assets are also employing people. Like if you look at the employment rate, for example, employment in 2019 for SOEs was 34,000. By 2023, it has jumped to 45,000. So these companies are not giving us the dividends we need, but we are employing more. If you go to JVCs, employment was 9,000 in 2019, but today, as of 2023, 11,000. If you go to other OSCs, other state-owned entities, the employment in 2019 was 53,000. That they have done well a bit, because by 2023 they have reduced it to 36,000. So the regulators, the commissions, and the other entities have done well by slashing down employment. But the SOEs that do not yield dividend, that do not make profit, have rather increased the employment. Right? And mostly these employments are done in election years. If you look at the election year, for example, 2020, it jumped from 34,000 to 37,000. So in years that we do elections, we just employ people for employing sake, and it causes what we call redundancy at work, underproductivity, duplicate of employment. One job could be done by one person. We hire 3 or 4 people to perform the same function.
And could it also be that some of these so-called numbers that we are saying are employees could be ghost?
It could be. It could
but
be.
we are dealing with a ghost situation here.
Yeah, but the report mentioned validation of these employees. So they may not be ghosts because they were validated. And so if you are not making profit, why should you keep employing huge numbers of people at these state-owned entities? So we need to critically re-examine these whole state assets and how we can make them very profitable. Because the moment we begin to make them profitable, as I indicated earlier, some of these tax impositions on that burdens the Ghanaian, as you people normally say, ordinary Ghanaian, would not okay.
Exactly. We are grateful. We'll come to the verdict on as to what we have to do to these state-owned enterprises. But on this particular case, did the finance minister lie when he said almost all SOEs are in red? From the figures that have been provided, clearly he did not lie. Was the finance minister playing to the gallery, or was it a propaganda, just like what the former minister for state enterprises is saying, Joseph Kujo? No. Did he provide figures to back his claims? No, he didn't. He didn't even provide the profit they made and the losses they made. But here, the finance minister has provided all the details. So on Fact of the Week, we fact-checked, and Dr. Kesa Latoforsen did not lie when he said almost all state-owned enterprises are in red. This is Fact of the Week here on Ghana's #1 CTV. We are live on Facebook, my CTV GH, also streaming live on YouTube as well. Let's stay interactive on the WhatsApp number 020 066 8486.
Excellent furnishing in a real estate business is a great deal for survival. My struggles as a young estate developer were cut short when I discovered Fernart Ghana. With quality furniture made from the finest woods and amazing after-sale service, Fernart Ghana changed my story with every single home I built. It's a one-stop shop that serves the interests of clients with a variety of living room and dining sets, solid wood kitchen installations, wardrobes, doors, cabinets, beds, pergolas, floor parquets, and many other wooden products that will last a lifetime. With Fernart Ghana, all clients are offered the opportunity to customize furniture to their specifications, and the smile on their faces says it all. Thanks to Fernart, now your home can look beautiful with furniture that would last for generations. Visit Fernart Ghana today and share my story. Locate us at Yaniba Estate, Osu, Accra, or call 0303 966085 or 055 278 4097. Think wood, think Fernart.
Welcome to Facts of the Week, your #1 most authoritative show that separates the facts from propaganda and lies on Ghana's #1 CTV. My name is Valentina Ofori Afriyie. Today, my guests, Mr. Benjamin Nsia, energy analyst, and Dr. Desmond Kofi Annan, broadcast journalist. We're discussing some of the issues that came up this week. Which one is the lie? Which one is the truth? Which is the propaganda? We've discussed the ECG issue, or state-owned enterprises. Finance Minister Dr. Kesa Latoforsen saying all SOEs are in red. We had a write-up from a former appointee, former Minister of State Enterprises, Joseph Kujo, saying it was a lie, but the truth has been told here that indeed the Finance Minister said the truth. There's also another discussion that came up this week, privatization of ECG. Is it true? Do we need to do it? Is it bad? Is it good? Energy analysts will walk us through. Let's look at ECG.
I think that there are reasons or justifications for privatization. One, we have to look at the performance of the entity, whether financially or in terms of technical or operational wise. We have to look at government's ability to inject certain liquidity to that particular entity. We have to look at over time as the entity improves in terms of investment. These are critical ways of assessing whether an entity must be privatized or not.
Okay.
Yeah, we may have other qualitative indicators like corporate governance structure or certain organizational culture with respect to political interference. But basically, if you look at the quantitative side, we have to look at these performances. So we look at the investment over time. Investment here, we can use the total equity of this particular company, whether through assets increment or maybe reduction in liabilities. The equity of this particular company is on the rise or is on the decrease. But if you look at ECG carefully, the equity, total equity is a bit declining. What it means is that the liability of this particular company outweighs its assets, or is getting closer to the assets. So it may get to a time that you may observe negative equities. And negative equity means that the liability of the company outweighs the assets of the company. So any injection of any liquidity, especially cash, will be taken away by the liability, or will be pushed out by the liability. And that means that the company in other jurisdiction might file for bankruptcy, right? In our case, that is it. So for example, TOR is a case where we are observing negative equity. So in other jurisdictions, TOR must file for bankruptcy, but in Ghana we are not. So if you look at ECG carefully, its total equity is also on a decline. For example, if you take total equity in 2019 of ECG, it was around 8 billion Ghana cedis. As we're speaking, 2023 data through the state ownership report tells us that it's now around 5 billion. So the total equity of this particular company is diminishing. So what it means is that the company is now mostly relies on liability to manage its operations, or maybe there are no assets improvement, and that is why we mentioned obsolete infrastructure within its distribution space. So it's one reason. So in terms of investment, ECG is not seeing the needed investment, and because maybe there's lack of financial support, because ECG is fully owned by government, so government must inject that liquidity, but government is not doing that. So
we tried that to bring a private partner into it, and it became worse.
So we could not. So in terms of investment, it is not coming in. Now, the other part we also have to look at that if investment is not coming in, is the company making certain profit, where this profit will plow back into the operations of the company. And if you look at ECG carefully, in the last 5 years, with 2020 being an outlier, ECG has been making losses, right? Losses upon losses. So 2019 made loss, and the loss even keeps compounding. Even 2022 loss was higher than 2023.
Over 8 million.
Yes, and if you look at...
But how do they make losses when they have been collecting...
We shall come to that too. We shall come to that part. But which means that there are certain operational inefficiencies in the management of this ECG that compounds their losses that we have to look at. Now, if you go to operational wise, right, in terms of system losses, it's also on the rise. And in 2019-24, so averagely operational and system losses or system losses of ECG is around 30%, right? And even 2024, there are certain projections that is around even 34%, right? So system-wise, ECG is not doing well. So where do we get the support from? Government must come in. So in 2023, government started what we call the Energy Sector Recovery Program. But before the 2023 Energy Sector Recovery Program, using the cash waterfall mechanism, government had always budgeted a shortfall in the budget to allocate to ECG to redeem some of these liabilities. In 2022, we tried giving ECG about 6 billion, right? At the end of the year, maybe third quarter projection, we had given less than 2 billion. In 2023, we budgeted huge amount again, 23 billion to be given to ECG. We could not. By third quarter, we are giving only 4 billion. So it means that there's that financial constraint on the part of government to inject into ECG to make it very viable and very to upgrade this system and other things. So the option is that if government doesn't have money, what do we do as a state? Because liabilities are compounding, right? And if the liabilities are compounding and government does not have the money to offset these liabilities, we may have to look at the private sector.
So are we selling it off to the private sector, or we're doing a PPP?
So I think during the National Economic Dialogue, I listened to Dr. Keke Sapon, which I even have an issue with the whole economic dialogue thing, because I think that they focus mostly on the power sector. Dr. Keke Sapon held positions at GMPC, and in the last 4 or 5 years, production has been declining. It's only in 2024 that we saw certain upward adjustment. But even with that, compared to 2019, we are still below 32% of our production. So I was thinking maybe petroleum will be mentioned. He didn't mention it. He also managed TOR at a point in 2004. When he managed TOR was doing 11 million barrels a day of production. He didn't mention TOR. So I think it was skewed towards power. And I know because the stage was set for power.
Exactly.
So with power, I think I also heard him mention that they were going to merge the hydros together, right? And merging hydros together means that the thermal will be a standalone. And standalone, he is thinking of asset sales. I think that we should not look at asset sales, because the moment you look at asset sales, you are bequeathing your assets to a private individual for the whole lifetime. So in the short term, you benefit. But in the long term, you are likely going to lose, right? Because the asset becomes someone's properties. So what I think we can do is not I think the thermal side of asset sales means that we are selling all our thermal to a private entity to manage, right? I think that we can still manage them, because the thermal side, the government pays well, there's no problem. We may need the liquidity now, but liquidity also means that we can do concessions, right? Okay. We can do debt to equity swap, whereby maybe those we owe can owe part of the assets. And then at the end of the year, when profitability comes, we share it based on the equity share or the ownership structure or what we have. So right to asset sales, I don't support that. When I heard Dr. K.K. Sapor mention it, I think he said some of the experts mentioned it, so he also came to mention it. I don't support that. We can go concession, right? We can also go certain participation within the whole supply chain of the power sector. I even believe that we can even have, if you go to Nigeria, for example, if you look at the Nigerian case, they divided their power sector into 11 zones for 11 companies. When you privatize for 11 companies, what you do is that you strengthen your regulator. When your regulator performs well, if you go to Uganda, that's what they did. If you go to Tanzania, that's what, even Ivory Coast, just here, that's what they did. So the fear is that when you privatize, it makes electricity tariff very expensive. But the last time I checked, Ivory Coast has one of the cheapest electricity tariffs, end user tariffs in Africa. But the distribution sector is being owned by a private company. So privatization doesn't mean that we should just divestiture, like what we did in the early 90s. It doesn't also mean that we should have right to asset sales. We can even have management contracts where we employ the private sector to manage our assets for us, if we think the public sector cannot manage it. If we think that maybe President Mahama appointing someone to manage ECG is a problem, because he thinks that it's the president who appointed me, so you cannot control me. The President Mahama can hand over the management of ECG to a private person. KPMG is there, PwC there, some of the banks are there. They can manage it and manage it well. We can look at that option. We can also look at an option like the concession of what I mentioned. I think we even started in 2019 or 18 when we brought the PDS in. But there are certain criteria that PDS ought to have met, but PDS did not meet. So if you are going to have a concession, we are going so because we don't have the money. Government doesn't have the money. Today they are mentioning 68 billion only for ECG, right? EPA, they are mentioning annually we need about $2.2 billion, 34 billion Ghana cedis. So in the power sector alone needs an annual fee of about 50 billion Ghana cedis to make it very sustainable in the long run. And you don't have you don't have the money. So you can have that concession, right, in terms of getting some private participation, and the private participation must have certain criteria, especially injection of liquidity. That is because the injection of liquidity improves the infrastructure for them to be able to collect. That is what Uganda did. When Uganda privatized their distribution in 2005, today, Uganda's revenue retention of their distribution is 95%. Right? Because the private person injected capital, liquidity into it. That's what we can also have. So we bring the criteria, private person bring this amount, or maybe you can open tender, people who are interested in managing ECG come, bring the amount you want to bring in, we agree the amount, and then say, okay, we are giving it to you for some years. Then that is what concession does. We are not giving our access to you, but manage it for some years. But these are the requirements. Bring this, bring this, bring this. If you also think that you want to even indigenize it, we say, oh, we are not giving it to expatriate business. This consortium by made what we call the local content, right? It's the same thing as indigenization. This consortium must be made of Ghanaians to manage this particular entity for us. And if you are managing it for 10 years, this is the amount we want you to inject every year into it. And you police your regulator well. And if you police your regulator well, the regulator will ensure that this private entity doesn't take advantage of Ghanaians. Right? And the other side also, we can go the Nigerian way, as I mentioned earlier. If you think ECG's operational area is too huge, you divide it into other operational areas and then give it to others to manage through the concession. Right? So with that competition among the private sector, the regulator also ensure that they perform and then give good services delivery to the end user. That is why I think we can go. But right, asset sales, I don't support it. We should not. Their assets, we should not support it. But some form of private sector participation is very key for us to sustain the debt and also make sure that there's stable power for Ghanaians.
So we need private
We need it. We don't have a choice. We need it. And it must come. If it doesn't come early, the sector will collapse.
Yeah, Val. Once again, you have an expert here. He's done justice to the subject, and I am even overwhelmed. Even Ghana, if we have 50 billion, you think that we should invest in ECG when that entity itself is running at a loss of 68 billion debt.
We've spent
recorded 68 billion.
We've spent 260 million on an edifice that is not completed. That's the Bank of Ghana.
Yes, you have a point, but I'm saying that I will not have 50 billion and invest in ECG when I know that there's a huge problem. I mean, system losses. And like Mr. Nsia said, when Uganda decided to check all these things, today, we cannot compare ourselves to Uganda when it comes to the area of system losses. Uganda is now doing 17 point something %. Ghana is doing 34% losses, even ahead of Kenya, who is doing 23.47 something.
And surprisingly, you know what? If you come to a benchmark given by PRC says that doing 22%.
Yes.
Which is even higher than what Uganda is doing, which is higher than Kenya, which is higher than South Africa, which is higher than Tanzania,
it means that
which is even higher than Cote d'Ivoire.
Right. We are not even thinking right. We are not even checking ourselves.
Yes,
we are not even checking ourselves to benchmark well.
Why should we even benchmark us at 22%? Which means you are just fueling them to do the bad things.
Yes.
And then we keep increasing the tariffs because they also need money to operate.
Yeah, and I think.
But is that the way to go?
And I think the tariff side, there's also another macroeconomic issues that as a country we must decide, we must speak on. You see, the reason why sometimes we are not getting reflective tariff is because of the depreciation of the currency. Because if you look at how we price our electricity locally, we look at inflation, it's a factor, international market price of the product, especially natural gas, we look at WACOG, right? And then we also look at inflation exchange rate. So anytime the exchange rate, the cedi depreciates against the dollar, right, it balloons the debt in the energy sector. Because ECG cannot collect reflective tariffs. Because at that time, how he buys the power is far expensive than how much he sells it to the end user locally. So if you also want to sustain the debt in the energy sector, that means that the Minister of Finance, with his fiscal policies, as you people call it, and the Bank of Ghana must coordinate to ensure that the cedi becomes very stable or even appreciate against the dollar. Anytime the cedi appreciates against the dollar, what it means is that end user tariff must be cheaper. Right? But if the cedi depreciates, end user tariff will increase. So appreciation of the cedi is also a critical way of also sustaining the debt of the power sector, and that must be done by the Bank of Ghana and also the Minister of Finance through fiscal or monetary policy, as you call it. Now, lastly, too, I think that I'm happy today when I heard John mention that we are also going to have what we call a second phase of the gas processing plant. We are flaring 17%. We are injecting about 45% into the wells. These are free, cheap gas that if you go to UAE, if you go to Kuwait, they call it the cash cow. If you go to Russia, they call it cash cow. So why do we keep injecting and flaring where we can even use to power our industry? So the moment we get the second phase, right, today we are doing about 492 million standard cubic feet. If you are doing a day, so if we are able to bring the phase 2, what it means is that we'll be able to supply the natural gas we need to power our thermal plants. And that also means that the WACOG that is around $8 per British thermal unit today will decrease. Because if you go to Nigeria, they are doing $1.5 to about $3 or $5 as their WACOG. That's weighted cost of gas, right? But today we in Ghana, we are doing it 8. And that means that Nigeria's end user tariff is cheaper compared to Ghana. So if you have waste resources in petroleum, we don't call any resource waste. If you have natural gas that you are flaring even beyond the permissible emission limit, then you are just flaring it, wasting it. Why don't you get the phase 2 quicker so that we can feed into some of our thermal plants, make sure that our cost of electricity becomes cheaper, our work becomes cheaper, and everyone benefits. God, that will be the industrial base for your 24-hour economy. If it's not so, my brother, 24-hour economy will be difficult to implement.
Exactly.
Fact of the week here on Ghana's #1 CTV, supported by Fairnut Wood is for life. Great furniture made by Fairnut. You see our set here. They are our proud supporters. And also, If you want water, that's the best water on the market. Aquaba natural mineral water, quenching thirst and nourishing the nation with pure, clean, refreshing Aquaba natural mineral water. My name is Valentina Ofori Afriyie. My guests are here, Mr. Benjamin Insia, Dr. Desmond Kofi Annan. We'll be back after this.
Excellent furnishing in a real estate business is a great deal for survival. My struggles as a young estate developer were cut short when I discovered Fernart Ghana. With quality furniture made from the finest woods and amazing after-sale service, Fernart Ghana changed my story with every single home I built. It's a one-stop shop that serves the interests of clients with a variety of living room and dining sets, solid wood kitchen installations, wardrobes, doors, cabinets, beds, pergolas, floor parquets, and many other wooden products that will last a lifetime. With Fernart Ghana, all clients are offered the opportunity to customize furniture to their specifications, and the smile on their faces says it all. Thanks to Fernart, now your home can look beautiful with furniture that would last for generations. Visit Fernart Ghana today and share my story. Locate us at Yaniba Estate, Osu, Accra, or call 0303 966085 or 055 278 4097. Think wood, think Fernart.
Welcome back to Facts of the Week, your most authoritative program that separates the facts from propaganda, lies, and all the other matters. We come your way every Friday, 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. on Ghana's #1 CTV, live on Facebook, my CTVGH, and also on YouTube, my CTVGH. Feel free to share your comments. Dr. Desmond Kofi Annan will read some of the messages that have come to our WhatsApp number 020-066-8486. Before we tell you what the actual figure in the enrollment of free SHSs, the NPP government put it at 5.7. Is that true? Some say it's 1.3. Some say it's 3.1. What is the actual figure? Before we tell you that, that's one.
Yeah, Val, our viewers are really following the conversation here, and from Facebook I have Kojo Fiagbe. He says good evening. He's actually greeting you. It's a good one, Valentina. Bismarck Achu says hello CTV, and a couple of them. The WhatsApp is buzzing, and we have here. He says, please, you have to tell our listeners, viewers, to be adding their names.
Okay.
So that we can mention and refer to them as such. This one says, good show. I like the submission of Mr. Insia. Why is he not part of the energy team of the government?
Can you answer that?
Yeah, so, all right. This one too says, hello, good evening, Val. You're looking good. Show madam. Val. And this one too says, hello, CTV. I want to find out why. It says, I want to find out why the minister is not bringing the schedule for Dumso.
Well, the minister says there's no Dumso.
I think Dr. Kwame Ampofo, he defined Dumso as a generational shortfall. I don't think we have a shortfall with respect to generation.
Okay, listen to the minister, he was saying they're even transporting over 300.
Yeah, so we don't have a shortfall. I think most of these outages may be due to localized challenges. And normally I tell people that before you bring a timetable, you have to look at the magnitude of the problem, the shortfall. You have to look at the spread of it within the geographical space. And also have to look at the longevity, the period within which the outages will occur. That is only when you can bring a timetable. Now we don't.
But let me just do two of them, but the messages are so many. I'm not sure.
Okay, so let's do two and let's talk about the free SHS.
And this one is from Tizo. He says, I am Tizo from Tantra Hills. Good evening. I love the show. Keep it up. All right. And then the last one from here says, Cafe KNK. Cafe KNK says, well, he's running, I don't know, he's running an advert on our show. All right, so maybe you should continue from there.
Grateful for the messages, and we are very grateful for your interaction. So let's come to the free SHS. Let's listen to former Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia on the exact figure of enrollment in the Akufo-Addo administration on free SHS.
Say Umudi MPP ba ye the free senior high school education ye be break Ghana for Choboy ye share sabono o man penyi dada kan say ye dada Ghana for e ye 419 promise entimi mbaso is not possible and me can say it is possible ene yaba if you watching ye dis sabono so ya free SHS yankwada bako 5.7 million omwako senior high school free anka yetie omampeni dada anka Ghana ye free SHS but ye free SHS aba ono no reso na chalk in school and ye talk.
So that's Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, former Vice President. 5.7 million students enrolled in the free SHS. President John Mahama's first State of the Nation address, he says the figure is way below that number. Listen to him.
Once again, for emphasis and for the record, I, John Dramani Mahama, President of the Republic of Ghana, will not cancel the free SHS program. I will not cancel the free SHS program. I am determined to make it better by improving its implementation. And also, for the record, students who have benefited from the free SHS since its inception are about 3.4 million. The figure of 5.1 million beneficiaries as put out by the previous administration was an exaggerated and false narrative calculated to achieve political credit.
5.7, says Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. President John Mahama says 3.4. So what does the former PRO spokesperson for the Ministry of Education say? Listen to his write-up. Now, there's a write-up on your screen right now that's Kwesi Kwarteng confirming President Mahama's figure. According to him, free SHS, he is rather even talking about the same 3.4 million. So what happened to the 5.7? And you recall that the former education minister had stated after he had left office that again, the 5.7 figure, there was an error in that. When he left office, he stated in an interview that the 5.7, there was an error.
Yeah, that's true.
So I'm asking myself, when did the error occur? And for consistently, the years ahead, we were given this figure and they were budgeting for that in the budget. Where did the rest of the money go? Look.
Yeah, wow. I mean, it's important that we get into this matter. And it shouldn't be the business as usual. We should not just talk about it and then sweep it under the carpet. Because we're given figures, and I'm sure that in preparing budget for some of these things, actual figures were used in preparing some of these budgets. So if you say 5.7, it's assumed, in fact, it's not an assumption. It is the case that finances will have to be made for the 5.7 and not 3.5. And so it begs the question, where are those, or where is the funding that went into the SS that was recorded by the government? It's important. See, Article 41F says we as a citizen, we need to protect and preserve public property and expose and combat misuse
and that's what we're
and waste
doing.
of public funds and property. So it's important. we're emboldened by the Constitution, 41F. And so our call this evening, well, my call, I don't know about you, my call is that the Mahama government would have to get to the bottom of this matter and help us, as it were, deal with the substance of it. Because see, Kofi Nsiah's EduWatch made this point over and over and over again, that the figures that were churned out during the campaign time were erroneous. He didn't know how they were even getting these figures. Lo and behold, the chicken has come home to roast, and the figures are now 3.4 lying bare, and the minister himself has confirmed, his PRO has confirmed, and then the government, the current minister.
So it's in excess of 2.3 million.
Exactly.
So where did the 2.3 million number come from?
We are in an era of ghost.
5.7 and 3.4. You got 2.3.
We are in an era of ghost. Don't forget.
So the 2.3 million students are ghosts?
It could be. I'm saying that when investigation is launched into it, we'll find out what is happening there. You see, so please let the government sit up and start looking into some of these matters. It's important. 2.3, if per head we spend even if we spend 10 cedis on one person, you can do the mathematics and get the figures, and you know where those monies has been. It's not right. It doesn't make sense to any critical mind or anybody who means well for this country. And like I said, Article 41F emboldens us, strengthens us as Ghanaians to make sure that some of these things are curtailed. Yeah.
And now we've been talking about the Education Forum. The Education Minister Haruna Idrisu, they held in the Volta region, asking for now. It's not about the numbers. You're looking at quality now. Something you want to talk about?
Yes, I think that. Because I have a development background, so I mean, I look at some of these global standardized measures of interventions at the developing, what we call the developing countries. Prior to the Sustainable Development Goals, we had what Millennium Development Goals. Their target was access, right? So they wanted most of our people to be enrolled into education, but they realized that no, we shouldn't bring out chaff in the name of just being educated. So we need to go to quality of education, which is goal 4 of the Sustainable Development Goals. So the time of accessibility to education, we've gone past that. It's about quality. But Free SHS shifted a lot of resources to the second cycle institutions, either than to compare to the basic level. And all the data, I think I was just looking at a report published by UNICEF. They call it Education Budget Brief. Maybe I think my brother Kofi Asare might have come across some of these things. If you look at it carefully, our share of budget to the education sector per the national budget is not even up to global standard, right? We are currently doing around 10.3%. The global standard is between 15 to 20%. We are doing 10%. Even we set our standard at 23. We have not been able to achieve that. As per that part of it, the global says that we should do around 6% of GDP. We are doing around 3.1% of GDP. So it means that we are not injecting a lot of cash into the education sector. Even the part that we inject there, we now inflate it at the second cycle institution because we've made promise out of it that we are giving free. And that is why figures have been ballooned to 5-point-something million, because we want to inflate the figures so that we can inflate the budget and then take advantage of and benefit from it. So I think that as a country, yes, free education has become a political mantra today. But beyond the free, let's look at the quality. How do you position our younger ones so that the UN publishes a report called Human Capital Index, right? In Human Capital Index, if you look at the report published in 2020, we are competing in Mali, Burkina Faso in terms of education. We are doing worse, right? Like, so it means that it is not about making a lot of people go to school or whatever. Make them very competitive so that today that Chinese are bringing deep seek, at least some of our young ones can also bring something similar.
Exactly.
Right? That is not where education has gone to now. So it's not about the shouting. That's why earlier I said I don't want to, because I think that we are very emotional about some of these free SHS and other things. But the minister listening to us, Honorable Haruna Idrisu, we need quality education. We need very competitive education that any young Ghanaian from Ghana can start anybody, either China, US or Russia, to any educational competition. That is what we need. And that means that we must start from the basic level, because we've seen a lot of budget being diverted from the basic level to the second cycle. And that leads to some of these inflated budgets we are just...
And so the verdict is that it's not true that 5.7 people benefited from free SHS.
Yeah.
The figure is way below. It's hovering around 3.4. So the question we are basically asking is, where is the 2.3 million? That's how we wrap up this week's edition of Facts of the Week here on CTV Ghana's #1. My name is Valentina Ofori Afriyie. I was assisted by Mr. Benjamin Insia, energy expert and analyst as well, and also Dr. Desmond Kofi Annan, broadcast journalist. Thank you for watching, and your messages also on Facebook. In case you missed it, you can go back my CTV GH, Facebook, and YouTube and have a watch. Remember, Fact of the Week is supported by the best natural mineral water on the market. That's Aquaba Natural Mineral Water, quenching thirst and nourishing the nation with pure, clean, refreshing water. And also, Fairnut. Wood is for life. Great furniture is made by Fairnut. We're back, same time, Friday. Good night.